Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at this Translation for Impact T4I webinar series titled Sustaining ICT Innovations for Greater Impact, Enablers and Challenges. A very warm welcome to everyone here. My name is Catherine from the Office of Education Research, Research Practice Policy Group, also known as OER RPPG. I will be your host and moderator for today's webinar. Next slide, please. Some housekeeping matters first. Please note that this session will be recorded. If you are facing any technical difficulties, please let us know via the chat function and we will do our best to assist you. During the webinar, if you have any questions that you would like to ask the speaker, please do so via the Q&A function. Next slide. This is the program overview for today. After a short introduction to RPPG, we'll dive into the webinar. We will also have a Q&A session, after which I will be moderating, and we will ask for your feedback towards the end of this webinar. Before we begin, please let me share a quick introduction to RPPG. The Research Practice Policy Group started in the 5th tranche of funding by the Ministry of Education. The RPPG was formed and brought together by the expertise from previous tranches in order to house them together for the purposes of strengthening the research practice policy nexus. The role of our office is to optimize research translation and impact, where we define impact as the provable effects of research in the real world. So we do a 3-pronged approach consisting of dissemination, engagement and partnership, and implementation and impact. So for dissemination, we actually have our 3 journals at NIE, the Asia Pacific Journal of Education, Pedagogies and International Journal, and Learning, Research and Practice. For dissemination to educators, we also have SingTeach, the Knowledge Resource Bank, OER Knowledge Bites, and more. This is also why we are having today's webinar. For engagement and partnerships, we do a lot of engagement sessions with the various departments in NIE, institutes of higher learnings, and schools, where we conduct brokering between researchers and stakeholders. Lastly, but definitely not least, we also look at implementation and impact, where we partner with researchers in the implementation of research, provide consultancy on impact documentation, evaluation, and the usage of implementation science. When we talk about impact, I'm sure we want greater utility and sustainability to maximize our resources. This is also why we have our webinar today on sustaining ICT innovations for greater impact to share some tips and tricks to sustain and increase impact. To begin today's sharing, Ms. Lorraine Au, Unit Head of our RPPG, wanted to share on some factors that contribute to research impact based on a planning grant that interviewed researchers and research users of 8 different projects at NIE. Unfortunately, Lorraine has taken ill and is unable to speak at today's session. We apologize for that and we'll arrange for that sharing at another suitable webinar. Hence, we'll dive straight into the main sharing for today by Dr. Elizabeth Koh. Dr. Koh is a senior education research scientist at the Center for Research in Pedagogy and Practice, which sits within the Office of Education Research. She is also the Deputy Director for Research Support under the Education Research Funding Program Office. Dr. Koh has examined and developed learning analytics systems and dashboards to nurture learners' lifelong learning skills. She has held numerous research grants and been published in peer-reviewed journals and conferences. Dr. Koh, please.
Thank you so much, Catherine, and a very good afternoon to all who are in Singapore. And so thanks for coming to spend your afternoon here. And just give me a second to share my screen. And today I'll be sharing with you on three projects that I have been working on, 3 huge projects, I would say. And I would like to share with you how I'm actually working on them for greater impact. So the title, as what Catherine has mentioned, is Sustaining ICT Innovations for Greater Impact, Enablers and Challenges. So let me share some background about myself. I actually have a PhD from the information systems field, which is actually a multidisciplinary field by itself in a bit of computer science, sociology, psychology, and operations research. And in the last 10 over years here at the National Institute of Education, NTU, I've been actually enculturated as a learning scientist in the field of learning and computer-supported collaborative learning. So I've been, last several years, I've been focusing on this area of learning analytics, using data from tools to give feedback to learners from a formative approach. So that's why it's called formative learning analytics. And not just cognitive skills, but actually non-cognitive skills, or what some people call lifelong learning skills or 21st century competencies. So my team and I have co-designed and developed 3 techno-pedagogical innovations and have respective translations and spin-offs from these. And I'll be sharing with you all 3 different innovations shortly. So this is the portfolio of learning innovations. I must say I did not do this alone. There were different teams that I worked with. And notably for WiREAD, it was actually started by my colleague, Dr. Jennifer Tan, and I have carried on her work. So I'll be sharing you first about CoVAA, which is the one in yellow here, and how it has been translated and scaled, followed by WiREAD, and then my Groupwork buddy. So what is CoVAA? So just give you a second to look at these pictures. So these are screenshots of what CoVAA is. And CoVAA actually stands for a collaborative video annotation and analytics environment. So you can see here there's a video, and it has time point based annotations that you can collaborate on. So you can actually annotate and somebody else can reply to you. And you can reply to somebody else along the time point of the video. And the other aspect of CoVAA, as well as CoVAA PD, which is for professional development, is the real-time, or as real as it gets, digital formative feedback. And those are through the different trace data or different types of data that have been involved in this application that you just see here. So we have a social network of who talks to who. We have tags, what tags are used in short. And this provides feedback for the participant on the activities in the learning activity. So I will be sharing you logic models of the respective tools in relation to how interventions or tools are developed so that it can be helpful on what you can see enablers and also some of the challenges. So you can see here, there's a CoVAA platform, and PD stands for CoVAA PD, for professional development. So CoVAA and CoVAA PD, the main difference is that we actually redesigned it for teacher professional development. So there were some elements that we redesigned. So in this case for pedagogical, we actually added tags from the Singapore teaching practice. And we also made it a conscious effort to talk about reflection, as well as incorporating this into the lesson design. And next, we also have the content. These are lesson observation videos. And these were videos that respective teachers in their professional learning communities actually put into CoVAA PD. And so what activities they basically engage in practice, discussion. So they would engage in those online discussions and annotations that you saw, asynchronously at their own time, at their own pace. And then we would actually had 3 sessions where there was a online, either online live session or a face-to-face session where the coach will actually go through and discuss further what are some of the things that they talked about in the video. And we also use metacognitive scaffolds to actually guide them in their activity so that they would reflect more and deeper. And then there's the formative feedback from the dashboard, as you can see, that shows some of the activities that they actually discussed about. And then this actually allows them to actually have PD for the teachers anytime, anywhere. So expands the opportunity for reflection. And it also increased the depth of reflection for their own teaching. and also provided timely feedback for them. So this is the impact, as you can see, and they were in the surveys that we did, pre and post, we actually found that the self-reported perceptions of respective teaching areas actually improved. But you can see here that there are some challenges and also enabling conditions. So the first enabling condition is that the stakeholders need to buy in. So the respective coaches, the teachers, the HODs, school principals, they need to have buy-in, okay? And then in terms of PD, professional development, they actually have to make some time to actually do it on their own. And the next thing about building this culture of feedback, being open to receive the feedback, especially the teacher that's being, because usually what will happen, the teacher will upload a lesson of his or her own practice. So it could be, in this case, we had it with physical education teachers. So it's a video of themselves teaching a class. And so that particular teacher would be actually given a lot of feedback. So there's the idea of being open to feedback and to improve, and so for others to also learn from that. In terms of device and connectivity, that's also important. But there were also challenges, as you can see here. There were organizational challenges. So when we said stakeholder buy-in, that's also a challenge because not everybody buys in as we hope that they would buy in. So you could have more buy-in from some than others. And there's also a need for support structures. So some schools and they actually have a projected time for their PD. That's when all the team of teachers could actually meet as a community to discuss about the videos face-to-face. After they have asynchronously discussed or annotated, then they come together to have further discussions and also collective understandings. And for video recording, the teachers have to record their own videos. So some of them needed more support in terms of video recording and also how to upload that. And then some technical challenges, such as we have to maintain the site and also to host the videos. And also it's not easy, sometimes it's maybe difficult at that time to have one-to-one devices. So this actually is also part of the logic model, where it talks about the goodness of the innovation. And so for this was actually a collaboration with the Physical Education and Sports Teacher Academy, or PESTA for short. So that was it met the outcome, the desirable outcomes, or basically the needs of PESTA, in terms of looking of a resource that allows teachers to help in their professional development. And in this case, we had several trials, and we had a relatively rigorous research that designed, although there was no control condition, and we completed a proof of concept. So this because of this project, there was further interest to take this on for the larger teaching fraternity. And so this actually shows you the scale or the scaling of CoVAA. CoVAA actually started off with EduLab grant in 2015, where it was focused on schools. As you can see here, it focused on subjects such as social studies, geography, and science. The idea of getting them engaged in the subject through the video content, and to really have time point-based video annotations. These affordances of CoVAA was found to be of interest to the PESTA branch, as well as to ETD in MOE. And because of that, we collaborated with a second project, which is a Ministry of Education Academies Fund. So we received a Tier 2 grant for this to actually expand CoVAA into CoVAA PD. And we also trialed it with a pre-service class in NIE2. And based on the interest and I would say the positive findings from CoVAA PD, so PESTA actually commissioned myself to actually expand CoVAA PD to the larger teaching fraternity. And at that time, there was discussion that the Singapore Student Learning Space, the SLS, would be a good venue for it, as teachers are familiar with it. And at the time, there was the other system was not ready at that time. So this CoVAA PD has now been integrated in the SLS, the live SLS, for all teachers on a trial basis, I must add. So if you're interested to take a look at it and to try it out, feel free. As long as you have an SLS account as a teacher, you can go in, and it's available at the app library, as you can see here. Yeah, so these are some resources for CoVAA and CoVAA PD. So this, I would say, is one of my most successful scaling tools. You can see there was support from our MOE collaborator, very strong support. And but beyond this current project, there's also going to be some challenges and issues down the road, which I'll highlight towards the end of this discussion. If you have any further questions, feel free to put it into the Q&A button in the form, the Q&A form, and I'll address them shortly. I'll go on to my second project, which is WiREAD or WiREAD Plus. So WiREAD actually bears some similarity to CoVAA. Instead of a video, it's now text, an article. You can see it's an article here, and you can. It's also a computer-supported collaborative learning tool using assessment for learning and dialogic learning as its pedagogical framework. And students can actually, participants can reply to each other, annotate the article, highlight it. And we also have meta-cognitive prompts to activate the participants' thinking. For example, you can use any kind of prompts, and we always have two sets of prompts or two sets of text. So the participant always have to use these two sets of text, and these are customizable by the teacher or the coach, so that the learner can think about what they say as they annotate and as they reply. So actually, when it first started in 2015, it was used in the English language, and it addressed the classroom challenge of the lack of print-based text, as well as the scarcity of dialogue and formative feedback. So this WiREAD was brought in, developed and co-designed with teachers, with developers, with education officers to actually foster reading and as a cultural practice, as a rich social practice. And it promoted critical reading skills, metacognition, and self-regulated learning. An interest in this first prototype has led to WiREAD Plus, which I'll be focusing on, which is an augmented design to cater to all educational levels. And we tried it from as young as primary schools. So we had primary 3 students, that was our youngest participant, and all the way to older learners, adult learners in the tertiary institutions. And this positive findings from that WiREAD Plus trial also has led to a very small research translation grant, which is called a rate planning grant. And we are currently integrating it with the SLS Sandbox. See, this is a quick preview of what it will look like on the Sandbox, as you can see here in the bottom 2 pictures. So let me go through the logic model of WiREAD Plus. So we have the platform, and then this pedagogical model is, besides what I mentioned earlier in terms of computer-supported collaborative learning and dialogic learning and assessment for learning, it also complements active learning scaffolds that schools are using. And in terms of content, it's any article, any text, any multimodal text. So there could also be pictures and also some videos, but you can only highlight text that the teachers want their students to learn. And next, we actually, in terms of activities, it's basically a classroom community of annotations and replies about the text, with the emphasis on the teacher-specified metacognitive prompts that I mentioned earlier. So this can be anything that the teachers want the students to learn about or to activate their thinking of. And for a start, we use Paul Elder's wheel of critical reasoning. So we had tags such as assumption, audience, message, inference, for example, as these tags to help students exercise their thinking. And in the classroom discussion, we had a teacher facilitation of those discussions. And we also encouraged students to actually hit a certain number of targets in terms of the annotations, the number of annotations, and the number of replies. And they were also given on their self-paced, so they could click on the dashboard at any time to actually view their feedback from the learning analytics dashboard. So students would, in terms of intermediate outcomes, they would even complete, most of them would complete the target number of annotation replies. In terms of the feedback that we received, students actually appreciated having different metacognitive prompts and tags, as well as its diversity, and it strengthened the usage of what they would write, and also the perspective thinking from other students, as other students also replied to them, as well as for their thinking. They also found the feedback from the dashboard useful to also see or realize that, oh, they have been using, for example, this tag very often, like message, but now I should try this other tag, inference, because I haven't used that tag at all in their discussions. So in terms of overall impact, it actually, at the classroom level, it actually helped to generate collaborative and critical reading as a highly generative and meaningful social practice, where students could learn from different perspectives. And they will always tell us in our qualitative focus group discussions that this is the first time I'm hearing and learning about so many different perspectives other than our small group in school. And students were able to even learn in that sense on their own pace. They could refer to all these sharings at their own time after the class activity. And some of them even use it for their revision for their exams later down the road. And for teachers, it actually helped them in leveraging these kind of technical pedagogical innovations in their own teaching and learning. So some of the enablers were definitely in terms of the buy-in for teachers, the head of department, the schools, the principals, the school leaders. And the teachers also co-designed the lesson with us, and also made available what text they wanted to use. It also helped that the students were familiar with the tags, so the metacognitive prompts that they were using. For those who were less familiar, it was also one of the challenges. And also they needed to have their PLDs for secondary school students and make sure that it was working. So that helped them. For some of the challenges, we have buy-in once again. We had basically other schools that rejected us, so they didn't want to participate in this project. And then it also helped that for students, when they have to annotate and highlight, right, it's easier to have a mouse. So simple things like that makes the user experience easier. And it wasn't that compatible in certain screen sizes. So if it's too small, like on your phone, it was hard to see. So bigger, larger screen sizes helped. And in terms of our server and technical resources, we had to figure that out and make sure that it was stable and it could support a large number of students, because we had at one time up to 3 classes using it at the same time. So there could be some delay. So this is the goodness of innovation of WiREAD Plus. You can see for WiREAD Plus, the earlier version WiREAD actually had we had intervention as well as a control group. So that actually showed the effectiveness of the study, because it actually showed positive gains from that first prototype, and that's why we went on to this other augmented WiREAD Plus. Where it was now trialed in not just a secondary school context, but as I mentioned, as young as primary school to tertiary, junior college, as well as tertiary. And we made it very flexible so that the teacher could actually customize many different aspects of the system. And in terms of the pedagogical design, it supported active learning scaffolds, as well as whatever asynchronous, as well as synchronous designs that the teacher wanted to have. This is the spread of WiREAD. As you can see here, I started off with the first prototype, and then with my colleague, Dr. Jennifer Tan. And then after I took over for the WiREAD Plus, which looked at the scalability readiness across the different educational contexts. And the teachers also helped to spread the use of WiREAD because they found it really useful, and they shared it in several presentations. And one of the schools also won an Energy Award regarding WiREAD. And based on this relatively positive findings, I received a small translation grant, which is currently in progress, to extend this to the Singapore Student Learning Space Sandbox. So this is only a very small project, and we have MOE English language department and literature branch, CPTD, collaborate on board to help to see how more of the concepts, the design principles in WiREAD can be translated further down the road. Besides the technological aspect, which in this point of view is just focused on the tooling sandbox. So definitely there are some further challenges, and but these I would say is a work in progress of how WiREAD is trying to scale in some way. And these are some of the resources that you can take a look. But for the WiREAD trial in the SL Sandbox, actually we're still currently looking for schools to participate. So if there are interested schools, you can directly email me. I'll be very interested. If you're interested, I'll be happy to basically work with you in any way. Moving on to my third innovation, I would say this is the last innovation that I'll be sharing, and it's called my Groupwork Buddy, or MGB for short. It's a formative learning analytics tool to help students learn about their personal teamwork competency and become more purposeful in teamwork. So this is in line with the 21st century competencies or competency of collaboration. And we have developed a pedagogical model called the Team and Self-Diagnostic Learning, or TSDL for short. And we developed 4 dimensions, or based on previous research, we focused on 4 teamwork dimensions that are transportable. And these are here. And the first project was a design-based research project that helped to basically develop the system. And we tried it over 2 trials in 2 different schools to look at how it can be basically integrated in the curriculum, how it can be very useful to teachers and students. And then the second related project was more of an effectiveness study, where we had a quasi-experiment with a waitlist control group to look at the effects of this intervention, with also looking at the fidelity of how the teachers implemented it in their respective schools. And the findings, I'll not go through the findings, but basically most of the teamwork dimensions improved for students, especially when the teachers were very, they were focused on the principles of the design, not so much the technological follow-through, but when they actually had a good understanding of the principles of design. And that's when we saw the greatest effects for the participants in the intervention. And so based on these relatively positive feedback, we had actually tried to translate it in 2 ways. One of the partner schools actually found that there was a need to actually equally foreground the content knowledge, not only the 21st century skill, but to look at content knowledge at the same time. So that's my Groupwork Buddy for Geography, or MGB Joe. Briefly say something about that later. And also because I wanted to look at teamwork for higher education, and there was also a need to look at teamwork at the tertiary level. There's also a translation to higher education in tight. So let me go back to my Groupwork Buddy, the translation logic model. Basically, it's the platform in terms of technological inputs. Then the pedagogical model, as I mentioned earlier. And in terms of the content, we have some teamwork content, and we also developed a lesson package that is applicable to all projects in any school for the secondary school context. And in terms of design elements, this TSDL is integrated with any school project that usually has about 2 milestones, one middle in the project, as like a submission, a brief submission, and the final submission at the end. So the teacher also is the one facilitating this whole activity. So they do have the understanding of design principles. And then the dashboard also is there through the process of that TSDL to help students gain formative feedback and to reflect on their teamwork. And many students tell us that before this, they never really reflected on teamwork so intentionally. It was like a byproduct, or like they just had to get in groups and do their project, but they didn't really reflect on their teamwork. But in this case, this whole when they use MicroBuddy, they actually it's required for them to intentionally reflect on their teamwork and make sense of it, and so they can get very many of them say it's the first time they're thinking intentionally about teamwork, and so they are able to understand teamwork processes and their skills more. So this also, through the process, we also empower students to set their teamwork targets. So you ask them to set teamwork steps and to improve on them so that they will grow their teamwork. For teachers, they will have to have an understanding, they were able to have a greater understanding of their students' own teamwork, because they could see it as a class level, and the system also will flag out for them those students who are more at risk, those lowly rated by their peers. And some enabling conditions were definitely the teachers, the head of departments had to buy in, they had to agree, and school leaders had to agree to this activity. And for the teachers itself, they must have this mindset of wanting to develop their students who are CCs, and they had to create this safe space for students to communicate and talk about teamwork, and to understand this is for their own self-development. So that really helped in laying the groundwork for students in completing this activity well alongside their tasks. So, and this will benefit them the most. And so as internet connection, that they could be used relatively easily. So they could use it on their phones. Many have used it on their phones as well as on their PLDs or their at that time laptops. But the challenges would be for teachers, would be, their own teacher factors, as well as the curriculum time. They would need to incorporate some time in the curriculum to put this activity in, especially the reflection activity, because it's not trivial. It takes a bit of time for students to actually reflect on their teamwork. So we actually recommend that this could be one session would be given for this. So one session for a secondary school class. School is about 45 minutes. So that whole rating and reflection activity, we recommend at least one session for that to happen. And so this requires time, and to integrate this curriculum time for this activity would be very important, and the buy-in in schools. Technologically, in terms of challenges, they would definitely need their devices because it's an online reflection. There's as well as face-to-face, so the blended reflection, where students, after writing it down online, they will also talk to their peers about their team members about it, and then have a team reflection about their teamwork. So these are more details about the goodness of the innovation. And so this proof of concept, I would say, is relatively stable. And it's and for teachers, they can use it relatively easily with some professional development help. And so based on the interest on this, as I mentioned, it was incorporated for one partner school because of the need to look at both Turan CC as well as the particular subject of geography. So we applied it in geographical investigation group view work. And so this was incorporated in the partner school, and I would say we managed to implement it, and this was a trying time because it was the start of COVID. So we had to move a lot of things online, but it was still feasible. It took a bit of a longer time, but all the students still managed to complete their projects, and also we saw some positive developments in both teamwork as well as their geography attitudes. So that was MGB Joe. And the concepts that we came up with in terms of the design principles and the lesson package is now being basically, we have provided to the MOE CPTD, the geography branch, humanities branch, and they are taking this forward in some way. And another spin-off of MicroBuddy is a spin-off or translation for the higher education learners. So this tool is called the Teamwork Intelligence for Tertiary Education. And I applied and received an I3G grant for this. And so basically we have developed this, and I've been using this in the courses that I teach, as well as we tried it in other instructors' courses. And this Teamwork Intelligence of Tertiary Education, because of its intelligence, we have embedded some form of AI into it. Notably using natural language processing for the chat log. And so that will extract and show to the participant the language features based on the 4 dimensions. And so that will be reflected if they use the online chat that's provided in Tide. So if you're interested to use Tide, feel free. This is actually open right now. It's you can see the link there. So if you're interested, you also just drop me an email and I can go through you very briefly, and there are guides available on how to use Tide. And see, these are selected resources about MGB, Geo, and Tide. So bringing all these 3 applications together, these 3 innovations, I think these tools actually started with based on there's a problem, right? There's a problems of practice. For CoVAA, it was about at that time was social cognitive engagement with the text, with the videos. And for CoVAA PD is to expand video observations to not just in class, during the institute time of teachers, but to expand it so that teachers could reflect on their on these videos at their own time, own pace, to expand opportunities for professional development. That's for CoVAA PD. For WiREAD Plus, it was to do with the lack of multimodal text at the time and a way to have collaborative discourse among all the students. For my group buddy is to looking at critical for WiREAD Plus also to help enhance their critical reading competency. For my group buddy, was looking at the need of looking at 21st century assessment in terms of teamwork. And then for my group buddy for geography, looking at for the geographer content. And lastly, for TIDES, looking at it in higher education as a way to support teacher reflection or for higher education students, teamwork and reflection. So there's a need for strong alignment with the learning, school, and teacher needs. So that's my #1 enabler as a recap. And this also actually encouraged when there are changes in policy, refinements in new initiatives and assessment. So for WiREAD in particular, I remember it because the O-level syllabus emphasized critical reading more. So that's why the teachers were very happy to use this tool to actually help their students to think about multiple multiple perspectives in different ways, looking at different tags, to exercise their thoughts and to learn from diverse perspectives. Yeah. So that was one of the key impetus for teachers when they decide to use this tool for their students. The other enabler, I think I mentioned all the 3 tools were the key personnel buy-in. So I was very grateful for the teachers, the school leaders who actually supported the project, who agreed, because there are other schools, because of various reasons, who were unable to participate. So I'm very blessed to have these people who have supported the project. And in terms of the research funding, for me to put in the grants and actually get funding, so I'm so thankful for that, the opportunity to have these, because you do need the funding to support the development, the research processes. And also in terms of forming a team, it's definitely not me alone. I started with saying that it's a team effort. These are teams, my team and I, right? It's a team effort. It's the project team is so important, and the collaboration with different MOE collaborators also is very important to get buy-in and to even understand the different levels of people in MOE that you also need to seek support for, which I'll elaborate a bit more later. So the support in terms of my research assistants, associates, and even other co-PIs, other teachers, is so essential to help the projects actually meet its intended goals. Alongside the project, there's a lot of co-design and also negotiation with stakeholders. It's not a one-way process, it's actually a co-design. So it's two-way. So there's some things that you hope to have, but some things that you may not be able to have as you talk to your stakeholders. And in terms of technical and infrastructures, as well as logistical support, that's so essential. And so I'm very grateful that NIE has a research development hosting service that is relatively cost-free, so that beyond the project, you can actually host it in the research hosting space. And then the other technical logical support that your team can help and that can be useful, but also these are usually during the course of the project. So now some of the challenges. Developing such tools take time and they can be costly. And so what you intend to design may not be so achievable. Some of it will also not be as what you hoped to be, but you try to meet as much as possible. But all this takes a lot of time and effort and also maintenance. So that's the technical part, I would say. And then in terms of the social technical part, which is the mindsets, fostering these mindsets in both in all your participants, be it from the student, the learner, to the teacher, the coach. Yeah, all this actually needs some time. And also it might require the stakeholder to make some changes to their set time and curriculum. Even to be involved in project, right? There's some cost time involvement, but I would say there's also some definitely learning that will be gained. And the next challenge is how do you meet research as well as practical longer term impact beyond during the project and beyond the project. And through all these projects, I realized that there are different levels of impact within the practical space in Singapore education system. Besides the class or the direct learner that you are intervening with, there's also the school, and then the many schools level, as well as the curriculum and policy level. And at the school level, as well as at the policy level, there are different stakeholders, MOE collaborators or MOE participants that you need to involve. Yeah, so that's what I've been learning. Besides involving them as collaborators, but even having an opportunity to discuss and also to share findings as well as to share potentials of these applications. So also back to the research, definitely publication is important, but how do you manage that with also the other competing demands of your time? And then for these web-based tools, post-project hosting and maintenance is still a perennial issue. So I would say there's no easy answers. One of the strategies that I'm adopting now is the tools that we're developing to be as maintenance-free as possible, and that it won't take up too much effort to maintain, so that you can still maintain it beyond the project with minimum costs. So going on to my final slide about lessons learned. For any new principal investigator, if you're thinking of doing similar learning analytics application, any type of application that involves development, web development, ask yourself, is there an existing tool already that you can adapt or adopt? There's no need to reinvent the wheel if there is, because even many of the commercial tools we are already flexible, and you can't compete on the same level that a commercial technological tool has, because they have venture capitalist funding and so on. So your value proposition when you want to develop such a new tool needs to be very clear, and you must prioritize the learning need so that it's a perennial, it's essential learning need that will not change. And when you're doing this, plan ahead and think about the different levels and of impact and how to sustain an application, especially in that long term, if that's your goal, if that's your intent. So all this needs a bit of advanced planning, and so talking to different stakeholders and different not only from the education sector but in other sectors, that will probably help you too. For me, as I mentioned, I realized that it's very important to gain support and buy at two levels, at the school level and at the policy curriculum, I would say at the educational system level, because there are two different stakeholders that will be there. So talking to them, getting their buy-in is important. And then collaborating with these members is important in your project team, and so allowing them to even go further. So I was very encouraged when I had my collaborators for MOE who wanted to take the project even further. So I supported them, and they actually took it further on their own. So going towards my last 2 points, coming up with new research projects so far is the way that I've been supporting these projects. So I've been innovating, tweaking, with basic, like say my newest project, I'm looking at learning dashboards, right? So I've been looking at similar areas in terms of learning analytics dashboards, learning analytics tools, and having new projects. So this may not be the only way, but so far it's a strategy that I've been doing. But at the end of the day, from a researcher's perspective, from a principal investigator's perspective, definitely there'll be lots of challenges. So you have to instead accept the challenges and try to overcome them with a positive attitude and with perseverance. So that brings me to the end of the sharing, and I'll be taking questions now. And these are my contacts.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Koh, for sharing more about these case studies of ICT projects that have been translated or scaled. I love how you brought up that having these innovations was a team effort that also included MOE collaborators, and that co-design and negotiation with stakeholders is important. I definitely agree that it'll be a lot more difficult to have these innovations and to scale them up without the help and agreement of others. So I hope that the tips and tricks we imparted will help provide you with some considerations for your own work. One of the things we do at RPPG is to walk researchers through an impact planning document to think about the impact goals for their research and to plan for it. We also connect researchers with MOE colleagues at a HQ level. So if you're not sure where to start, please do email us for a chat.